we're just gonna ignore that because I don't know when they're gonna stop. And I've already done my makeup, so. Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. My name is Jamie, and today we are doing a March reading wrap up. I am in like the biggest slump ever to ever exist. The biggest slump of my life. It's just that I'm running into this problem where a book will have a really solid start. It may even go up to like the 50% mark. That's just amazing. And then all of a sudden I'm either bored with it or the quality of it just plummets, and that kept happening this entire month. There was a lot going on in March. We decided to audition for a play in January, and we'd been doing rehearsals the entire time, January through February, and then all of March was going to be the performances. There were 12 performances, which is just really draining. In the middle of that, I was supposed to start a job, but I actually got a really high fever, which I like never get sick. I think the Monday of my fever, I was asleep all day and I only woke up every 4 hours to take cold medicine. So it's just been a very hectic month, a lot of new things going on, feeling a bit weird, feeling a bit out of it. And usually books would be my escape for that. Usually books would be what I turn to you know, feel stress relief, and it's just not working anymore. I don't know what it is. Come here, Tito. Say hi. He does not like that. Oh, okay. We're gonna start off with The Extraordinary Disappointments of Leopold Berry by Ransom Riggs. You may know Ransom Riggs from his other previously amazing and popular book series, the Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children book series. There might be a different name for the actual series, but that's the only book I read. I read that book, I shit you not, 10 years ago. I was 15 in high school. That hurts me to say, that being 15 was 10 years ago. So I picked up The Extraordinary Disappointments of Leopold Berry thinking that it was going to be some sort of fantasy lost media. The premise of this book is that after losing his mother, Leopold found these VHS tapes of a low-budget fantasy sci-fi TV show, and there was only one season, and he hadn't found any other existence of it on the internet, but he became obsessed with these, with the videotapes, and he started making his own like fan films, and they were about this other world called Sunderland or Sunderworld. I think it's Sunderworld, and there's like magic and animals that talk to you and all of these other like creatures, and he just fell in love with it, and he really wanted like his invitation to it. Now we start with Leopold being 17 years old and being this horrible family disappointment. He doesn't want the like doctor, lawyer, accountant lifestyle that his father really wants for him, and he started to see like weird things going on. Like we start with a raccoon, like quite literally the first chapter, we start with a raccoon being on fire, and he's like, oh my god, I'm hallucinating again. He used to see these things that he attributed to Sunderworld. The therapist attributed it to hallucinations due to grief over losing his mother. They kind of stopped, and then 5 years later, they're starting again. And lo and behold, it is Sunderworld. Oh my gosh, Leopold gets invited to Sunderworld. Can you stop? You're in air jail now. You're in air jail. I love you. I'm not squeezing you, am I? I love you. But you are not allowed into one room, and all of a sudden you think it's the end of the world. I was hoping for some like lost media sci-fi with a mix of fantasy, kind of Narnia-esque. I don't know if that makes sense, what I was imagining. I don't know if it ever got towards that point, like where did these VHS come from? I don't know if that was ever explained, because I DNFed at like 30%. I was really frustrated with how the information was delivered to us. The chapters are so short. I'm talking like a page short. And I think short chapters can be fine, but all of these chapters were like frustrating. They were so frustrating. For example, we had a chapter that was literally like 2 paragraphs. and it was a group of friends deciding on which diner to eat at. And they're like, I want to try this new diner. And they're like, but we always go to this diner. And like, oh, but you know, I like the fries at this diner better, but we always go to this diner. So then they end up going to that diner. They decide to go. The next chapter is them arriving and ordering food at that diner. Why was that a chapter break? Why was that not just one chapter? If it's not something stupid like that, like a stupid chapter break for no reason, it is like a cliffhanger or like a lead you on. I don't know how best to explain it, but it was like every chapter ended with, there's more to come. Turn the page and you'll find out, you know, that kind of vibe. I don't know how else to explain it, but I was so frustrated. They get to this magical world and then there's like a magical power outage, and all of the side characters, all of the little NPCs, they're like, oh, it's another power outage. Oh my gosh, these keep happening. It must be because of that evil guy or those evil monsters or whatever. If only we had the chosen one. And then Leopold Berry goes, you know what? I might be the chosen one. So he goes to the mayor's office and he's like, Mayor, I might be the chosen one. And the mayor's like, why do you think that? He's like, I don't know. I just do. And then he goes through some trials, and that's where I stopped. I did skip to like the halfway point to see if the story delivery became better, if this was just like some weird rough patch in the beginning as like an almost info dump kind of situation. But no, the chapters later are also like short and do that whole leading you on kind of thing. I was not interested in reading a chosen one trials situation, so I just DNF'd. I just assumed that the rest of the book was not going to be for me. I'm not going to waste my time on it. This isn't really a critique, but this is something I noticed. Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children also starts with like a 17-year-old boy seeing things that nobody else can see, and they attribute it to his like grief over losing a family member, and they're like, this is just hallucinations because of what you're going through. And then it turns out to be his link to a magical world. So it's just kind of weird that this is the same opening, if you get what I mean. Next, I attempted to read The Last Bookstore on Earth by Lily Braun Arnold. I kept seeing this on every shelf of the various bookstores that I went to, and I decided to read it, but I kind of went into it blind, so that's my fault. I enjoy more surrealism and like existentialism in my post-apocalyptic novels. Not that survival adventure novels can't be fun, but I just don't get much out of them. I really enjoy more introspection, and this book could have had that later on, but the part where I got to, it was not. The main character, Liz, survived this like earth-shattering storm. It was like acid, hurricane, I don't know. I don't think it was explained to me in the 30% mark. Liz has taken residence in a bookstore, and this bookstore kind of becomes a trading post. People use it as a landmark. They come by, they pick something up, they leave letters with her. Excuse me. Go sit down over there. She meets Maeve, and Maeve and her immediately hate each other. I don't even think that Maeve hates her. I think that Liz just is insecure. So she sits there and she's like, Maeve probably thinks I'm a baby because she's been out there surviving, and I've been living in this cushy little bookstore. And I actually had to look it up to see if this is like a love story, because it seemed so contrived why they wouldn't be friendlier to each other and why they had to have some sort of conflict. There were some like really cringe pop culture references. I've never liked a pop culture reference. I've always thought they were stupid. Hey! You can't get into one door, so now you have to get into all of them? Go sit down. The real reason I had to DNF this book is because it has one of my biggest triggers. I've talked about this on the channel before, but I cannot deal with gruesome bodily horror or bodily injury. So like, there's a lot of horror, especially when I'm reading, that I can kind of skim past. I really can't deal with like dismemberment or like limbs, specifically fingers and toes, being like ripped off or like cut off, and it's like, it really sickens me to my core. And this is within the 30% mark, but it is kind of a spoiler. They find a generator and Liz trying to like brush off Maeve's advice or like show that she's, you know, able to take care of herself, sticks her hand in the generator while she's trying to figure out how to turn it on, and it obviously eats her hand. And the rest of the first part that I had listened to, because this was an audiobook, was not super descriptive. It went in graphic. It was disgusting. Some people love that. They love to read about it. It's fun for them. I'm not that kind of person. I was sitting there doing laundry. I was gagging. Like, it made me want to throw up because it is just one of my biggest triggers when it comes to reading. There are other books where, again, I can just kind of push through it for the story, but I was not enjoying the story enough to try and push through this. It also definitely seemed like this was going to be a constant conflict. It wasn't going to be like a 6-month time skip and she's like, my hand is healing so well. Like, we were going to be constantly talking about her injured hand, and that was not something that I could stomach. So that was a DNF due to my personal reasons, not because the book was boring. It just wasn't for me. Okay, so at this point in the month, I am really going through it. I cannot get past the like 30% mark. Carrie can read mentioned that sometimes when she's in a slump, what she does is she reads the book version of a movie she really likes. I noticed that on Libby, The Magicians were available. I watched The Magicians in high school, I think. If you're not aware of it, I believe it was a sci-fi original, but it was on Netflix. That's where I found it. And it is basically like if Narnia and Harry Potter had a baby and that baby went to college. So there's this magical college that's hidden away, and only select students, they have to pass like an aptitude test. Select students get invited to this college, and then they just have like college classes that are magic based, and they go through a 5-year program, and everyone there is already really, really smart. They're always like the top of their class, like spelling bee champions, all of that. But then they also can do magic, and it's just really, really fun. It's like an elite group of magicians. And then there's some sort of conflict. I knew that at some point we were going to be entering a Narnia-esque other world because of the TV show. But I got, I think, 54% of the way in before I DNF'd. One of the things I didn't like about the TV show is how rushed it was. It felt like we didn't actually get to spend any time in the college, in the classes. They just immediately went out on adventures. There were some things that didn't get explained, like the episode starts with Quentin, the main character, I don't even know if I said that, Quentin and Alice entering into the like clubhouse that they suddenly got access to because they're physical kids and they do physical magic and whatnot. Just never explained because they didn't have time to explain it. That's how adaptations are. Sometimes they just do that. So I was like, let me read the book and get to spend time with Quentin and Alice and all of these other characters in the college, dark academia, magical academia, you know, sitting through their classes, seeing the college frat boy antics that they're gonna get up to, their little cohort antics. You know, some of my favorite books are, where is it? The Secret History, Babel, If We Were Villains, all of these books that take place at, all of these books that take place in college. You know, my college experience was ruined by COVID, so I live vicariously through these characters. Anyway. But the book is just like that too. I think the entire first section of the book is his 5-year time at the college, and then the rest of the book is the other adventures that they go on. And I was like, we are rushing through the best years of his life. The college years, we're rushing through them. That's insane. I want to learn about college classes. I want to learn about the hookups and the study groups and all of that. And we got it a little bit, and it does go in more depth than the TV show did, obviously, because it's a book. It has time to breathe. We get more info about like the sports and the way the colleges run and the teachers, and it's fun, but it's just so rushed. And I immediately got bored with it. I think I got really bored and started to get really annoyed with the book during the 4th year section. So again, this is kind of a spoiler, but it's out of context, so I don't know if it matters. We've been at the college for 3 years now, and Quentin has never mentioned the fourth years going on this secret mission. He's never mentioned, or the narrator has never mentioned that fourth years leave to go somewhere else. It is only mentioned the chapter that Quentin himself goes on this adventure. We were not told about this before. It was not set up before that there was something that they do. And then they get turned into geese and they fly around the world. Now I'm sure there's more to it. I'm sure it's like a magical life lesson that they learn, but I was like, they're turning into geese and they're flying around the world. Why am I reading about this? What do I want to do? And it didn't help that I had just gotten my hold in for Blood Over Brighthaven, which I was more excited to read. So I just stopped reading The Magicians. So let's see, we are 0 for 3 with books, and actually technically 0 for 5 because I did put 2 others down that I'm just not going to talk about. I really, really needed a win. I needed a book that I could just like turn on, listen to. Audiobooks are a bit easier for me when I'm in a slump. It helps me get back into reading, and I got a win. Surprisingly, through something I never would have thought of. Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green. So I have beef with John Green. It's one-sided. It's not like he has beef with me. It truly just comes from the fact that he is popular. So when I was in middle school, everyone was reading The Fault in Our Stars and they were talking about how emotional it was. They were crying on the bathroom floor and this, that, and the other thing. So I read it and I was like, guys, that was so predictable. Like, how did you not see that coming? And so this, I think, is truly where my hatred of popular things and book hipsterness comes from. I truly think it's because everyone would not stop talking about The Fault in Our Stars and I didn't like it. And so suddenly I had to be better than everyone because I didn't like popular things. This is something I'm working on. I promise you, it is something I'm working on. I'm not doing really good. I went to a high school where there was a hand-painted portrait of John Green hanging in our hallways. He wasn't the only one. They just did like famous people from Indiana for an art project and his stayed up. My social studies teachers and my history teachers, they always put like crash course videos on. And then, you know, he was infamously a Tumblr user. I was a Tumblr user. I couldn't escape him. And then I grow up, I get on TikTok. He's on TikTok. I can't escape this guy. My one-sided beef just grew and grew and grew, and I decided I would never read a John Green book. And then I saw Everything is Tuberculosis on Spotify, and it was only 5 hours, and I had a lot of laundry to do. As you may recall, the last time I tried to do laundry, I started gagging, and so there was a lot of laundry on our bedroom floor because I did just stop doing laundry. Once I DNFed that last book, I just stopped trying with the laundry. Also a nonfiction book, and as you may be able to tell, I am not a nonfiction girly. I don't really like nonfiction, and when I do like a nonfiction, it's usually a memoir. And I think what I enjoyed about Everything is Tuberculosis by John Green is that it felt like a memoir. A deep dive into the history of tuberculosis and how it affected not just American or Western culture, but also like everything, the entire world. Tuberculosis apparently has affected our media and like the stories we tell. It has affected our modern day beauty standards. It has created furniture, and it most certainly has affected the way we view and distribute medicine. The emotional through line between all of this historical and modern day info dumping is not info dumping, it's done very well, but you know, it's kind of little tidbits of facts about tuberculosis. The emotional through line between all of this is the life of Henry, who John Green met when he visited Sierra Leone. He went to a tuberculosis institution and he met Henry, who was this very sweet, energetic, and confident young man who was a tuberculosis patient. And we follow his life, how he developed tuberculosis, how the medicine helped or didn't help, how the doctors treated him, how the community treated him, how his family changed because of his diagnosis. And it was just beautiful, just a very beautiful read. Henry's not the only person we focus on. We focus on the modern day cures versus how they are gate kept. It's just a wonderful story of perseverance while also pointing out the injustice of the medicine industry. And I think that's a very important thing we should be talking about. I think this is a very, very good introduction into nonfiction. It's only like 200 pages. Also, the audiobook is narrated by John Green, so that was very, very cool. Love that. Next up, we have a physical copy. This is also a Dollar Tree book review. This is Red Milk by Sion. This person is like the Icelandic novelist. He has won many, many awards. He has won like the National Best Author Award basically for Iceland. And this is obviously a translated book. I've been wanting to get more into translated books. And this novella is about the life of a neo-Yahtzee. I don't know if I'll get in trouble for saying the real words. I'm just going to err on the side of caution and just say Yahtzee, but we know what we're talking about, right? So I picked it up specifically because I know that neo-Yahtzeeism is becoming rampant in the Nordic countries due to white supremacy and appropriation of traditional Nordic culture. I thought maybe a book about the founder of the Icelandic neo-Yahtzee group would be an interesting read to educate myself about a horrid culture. not Icelandic culture, about the horrid microculture of Nordic neo-Yahtzees. And I have to say, I was so bored the entire first half of the book. I put this down and left it for like quite a few weeks. And then I watched ContraPoints' new video about conspiracy theorism, and it really changed how I interacted with this book. The conspiracy video was very hard-hitting, especially since we have personally seen conspiracies take over politics. And if you're not aware, if you're somehow living under a rock, a lot of conspiracies really boil down to anti-Semitism. And Natalie has an entire section in the video discussing specifically the Yahtzeeism of conspiracy theories. And suddenly this book was very interesting. After watching that video, I kind of just happened to pick it back up at the point where he delved into neo-Yahtzeeism. Suddenly, I was watching a young man fall down the alt-right pipeline through conspiracies. And then I was drawing parallels between what this book was saying and what was happening to this guy, to things that were happening to the people around me and the politics around me. So why is a book like this important? I feel like it could definitely be seen as controversial because it's from the perspective of a neo-Yahtzee. And in fact, there was a review, a 1-star review on Storygraph where somebody said, I'm not a fan of reading anything from the point of view of a literal Yahtzee. And then they said they were pretty bored with the story, which we'll get to that later. But the fact that they said that they didn't want to read something from the point of view of a Yahtzee, when that's quite literally what it says on the tin, like it's in the summary. Bestie, you picked up a neo-Yahtzee book. People might pick this book up and think that this is a writer sympathizing with these horrible people, and that is not true. Sion talks in depth about how it was very important for him to make Gunnar's life super boring, like mundane. And that's because as soon as you put any kind of sensationalism or exoticism to a Yahtzee's life story or the Yahtzee ideology, that's what draws people in. We need to remember when talking about that these people are despicable and they are hateful and they hold a lot of hate over wild things and point to a group of innocent people and blame them for it. And when these people have power, they do despicable and destructive things, horrific things, and that's not something to gloss over. But we also have to remember that the people leading these neo-Yahtzee groups and communities are also like your weird uncle and your grandma. And it's not that they are people you need to sympathize with. Like the fear that these Yahtzees were once normal people, everyday people that you talk to, and like they just fell down a horrible pipeline. And that's like the horror of it. Not trying to sympathize with neo-Yazis, not trying to say that they were sad boys who had horrible childhoods and, you know, they just fell down this pipeline accidentally. No, that's not what's happening, and that's not what this book is about. It's about questioning what we could do differently to keep these people from falling down those pipelines, and also recognizing that the horror of this stuff is that it's ordinary people and it's not anything special or exotic or something to idolize. They are quite literally just your neighbor. Okay, we need to talk about Blood Over Brighthaven. I genuinely don't know if I should make like a rant review video, because as I was writing this down, I was getting more and more frustrated with this book. But I think a part of that is just that I read it yesterday. I didn't like it. I didn't like it. This book came highly recommended by people I trust, by book reviewers whose opinions I hold in high standing. And this book had an amazing 50%. And then everything after that just really nosedived, just plummeted, and just became not something I'm interested in. So in this world, there is a city called Tyrion, and it's our magical city. It's been advanced machine-wise, technology-wise through magic. And outside of Tyrion is the land called the Quen. And they're indigenous people of the Quen, but they are suffering through something called blight. Blight is this magical thing that just rips apart plants, animals, humans, and as this goes on, more and more food is disappearing. The animals are being ripped away, so there's nothing to eat, nothing to grow, and a lot of people are getting murdered. And so this one tribe of the Quen, called the Caldone, decide to attempt the crossing. There is about 2 miles outside of the city that is just the most dangerous. It's where the blight is consolidated. Like, very little survives there. But they attempt the crossing, hoping that some of their people can make it to the Tyrion border and live there. One of our main characters, Thamel, is the only one to survive with his niece. He is able to save his niece, but everyone else of his tribe is just gone, just dead, and it's horrific. It was an amazing first chapter, by the way. Just like the way it was told, it was horrific to read, but like so exciting and so interesting. And then we skip 10 years into the future and we're with an entirely different character for like 90% of the book. The actual main character is a girl named Siona, and she is breaking glass ceilings, babes. She is like the smartest mage in the world, and she is attempting to become the first female high mage. We live in a city, or we're set in a city that is very racist against the Quen and very sexist. Like, they have a very low opinion of women. Women are supposed to be silent, and they are supposed to make babies, and that is it, right? But Siona's like, no ladies, I'm gonna break glass ceilings and I'm gonna be the first female high mage and make history. And she does, but then she has to face her colleagues who are all like frat boy men who are horrible, and that fucking weed whacker. One of her colleagues decides to mock her by assigning her not a real assistant, but like promotes the janitor to be her assistant. And she's like, they're not gonna mock us. We're gonna show them that we can work together no matter what. And I don't need a real assistant. And so her assistant is Thamel, if you didn't guess that. She and Thamel start working together, and together they learn about each other, and she learns about the Quen and what they're going through, because again, this is a very racist city. All the Quen are just laborers, and then they learn about secrets and magic together, and it's a whole thing. I'm gonna try not to spoil it. There is an amazing twist. I had to like put my iPad down and like go take a breather when that twist was revealed. I had to like take a lap around my apartment just like thinking about it. It was amazing. And like the fallout of the twist after they realize this, the emotions that our main character Siona goes through, wonderful. Love the introspection. Love how she feels. Love her like decisions that she makes. Everything after, shit. I truly don't know if the actual quality of the writing style was getting worse, or if the stuff that was happening in the first half was just starting to grate on me. I don't know, but at the 50 to 60% mark, it goes to almost all dialogue. Like, there are parts of introspection and narration and description, but it's like just dialogue, 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 dialogue. And I hate that. I love dialogue. I think dialogue can do so much, and you can have so many cool moments with just dialogue, and you can really build a character with their voice and how they speak and how they choose to reveal information. But when an entire book is all dialogue, then that just means that everything is told to me. Everything was told to me. And I hated that. And there were so many things that could have been naturally like explained in narration or through observation, but no, they had to just tell it to me when it became important to know, not beforehand, no setup. So this might get a little bit spoilery. I'm gonna try to be vague, but I think you can kind of understand what happens. But spoiler warning. So one of Siona's colleagues attempts to assault her because this is a book about sexism. So we have to have an assault scene because every book about sexism has to have an assault scene. Obviously, didn't you know that's like the required checklist, right? I'm getting upset. I need to calm down. Okay. And I'm not saying that to like diminish sexual assault. I know the reason it is so prevalent in books about sexism is because the actual statistics of sexual assault is so high. But the reason I feel comfortable complaining about it is because they never feel, and I've talked about this before, they never feel thought out. It just feels like we need to make this bad guy a bad guy. Suddenly he's not just throwing quippy one-liners and you know, saying some rude things. Now he has to actually do something physically bad. So we're gonna just make him assault our main character. Like, that's just gonna have to happen to really show how bad of a person he is without actually developing him as a villain. He just kind of is introduced, fucks off for 50 to 60 pages, comes back on, says something rude, fucks off for another 10 pages, comes back on, and all of a sudden he's our main villain. Sorry. Let me calm down again. So, that being said, man tries to assault Siona. Damil obviously comes to the rescue, and I thought that was pretty sexy. Pretty cool, right? He comes to the rescue, he punches the guy out, and then later, Siona and Damil have regrouped, and he is talking about how he's wanted to do that forever. And all of a sudden, it's revealed there are no maids allowed on that floor because of this colleague and his habitual assaults. And then also the fact that Damil has attacked him before because of this, and the guy broke a bottle and stabbed Damil with it. I'm sorry to laugh because this is supposed to be something like horrific that's happening in the book, but the way it was told and the way it was not set up, which you could totally set it up so much earlier, where Siona just notices that it's only men on this floor, other than like her colleagues, because of course they're only male colleagues, but like there's no maids, and on the other floors there've always been maids. Why are there no maids here? In the scene that he's explaining that the colleague has attacked Damil before, she goes, oh yeah, I did notice that you guys had some like issues, like you always kind of were weird around him. I just feel like it could have been set up naturalistically. It would have made way much more sense if we had laid the groundwork for it ahead of time, and it didn't just come out of left field, and then they backfilled that actually Damil's had a problem with this guy forever. I'm gonna do like a compliment sandwich, so I'm gonna talk about how I loved the magic system. It's like magical coding. So they're like on typewriters, and they make spells, and they talk about like lines of spell work, like lines of coding, and they're programming the magic to like work this different technology, and I thought that was so cool. Don't get me wrong, I love a good like fey, snap your fingers and a whole feast is on the table kind of magic. Magic is a science that you can study, like in Babel, like in Full Metal Alchemist, like in Foundry Side. All of those kind of like depictions of magic as a strict science that you study, I think is so cool, and I love the world building around it, and I think it's amazing. Because we are with Siona so much and we barely get Thamel's perspective, it does kind of feel like a white savior thing, because Siona realizes what's going on and she's like, I'll put a stop to it, and it's like, you learned about this literally a week ago. As a person of the oppressor's class, she thinks that she's gonna put a stop to it in like a week. And maybe that's the point. I did get to, so I DNF'd at 70 and then I was skimming to see what the plan was just to see how they dig themselves out of this hole, and then I DNF'd again at like 84% because it got so cringe and I just hated it.
Hello, this is Editing Jamie. I would just like to pop in and say that I actually decided to go back and skim the last 15% of the book. My opinion did not really change. I will say the very last sliver of the end, like the very last couple chapters, do become a full circle moment, and I enjoyed that. I thought it was an interesting conclusion, but I don't feel like the author really built up the characters or the world at large in order for that moment to really have an impact, because we stay with Siona so much. I didn't care about Thamel at that point. I didn't care about any other Quen. I really did not care about Kara. Did not like her as a character, but that's that's more of a personal thing. I don't love Siona's final arc. I don't love how her character arc ends at all. And I think it is very much a white savior trope. Very much. I think if we had stayed with Thamel, if we had learned more about Kara as a character, if we had learned more about the Quen society, we would have had more of an impact in the last half of the book. Also, the dialogue became very repetitive. We were just talking in circles over and over, and maybe that was a stylistic choice to explain how conversations about racism feel like you're just talking to a wall. The last half of the book really soured how much I enjoyed the first half of it. That's it. Back to your regularly scheduled program.
That's the other thing, like it got very cringy. Specifically the dialogue got very cringy. I have some examples. There's a teenager in it and she does not like Siona, and she goes, don't try to girl talk me. And it's not like this is the language was ever stylistic, but it seems so modern in these moments. I said this in a review for, I think, God Killer, but I said something along the lines of, when reading a fantasy, I don't want to be able to tell that the author has watched a Marvel movie. And it's not like there are any Marvel references in this or God Killer. It's just that, like, I can tell that the humor is super modern in the sense of a Marvel movie, a TikTok skit about a fantasy book that you're interested in, you know what I mean? And again, the dialogue was never stylistic to be like old-timey or, you know, fantasy-esque, but, you know, these moments really just made me cringe. Oh gosh. This is fully just turned into a review. Siona has said that she's a child of poverty, but then the text never backs that up. Yes, her aunt and her sister work, and she is a working woman, so I guess that's what they mean, but like they have an apartment and she wears nice clothes. Unless the statement was supposed to be she thinks she's a child of poverty and she needs to check her privilege, but like I don't think that's what it meant. So I just, as a person who grew up in poverty, it really ground my gears when she kept saying she was a child of poverty. She was like, grew up on the wrong side of the tracks. Like, no, you didn't, girl. You're across the street from the baker. What the fuck are you talking about? It never felt like I was able to come to conclusions by myself. I was very much hit over the head with all of this, and I think that comes from the fact that it's all dialogue, so it's all being told to me. It's like we could have shown things through world building or through more naturalistic observations, and I could have come to these conclusions without, specifically Thamel, telling me all this stuff. But no, he has to explain everything to Siona, and because I'm in Siona's head, he has to explain everything to me, and it's just like, this is boring. So a while ago, my friend was talking to me, and I said something about how I don't mind spoilers because I've read so many books, specifically fantasy. I've read fantasy for 2 decades. I am very familiar with the different tropes, the like checklist of plot points that you can draw from, the character archetypes. It's very hard to surprise me, and the only ways to surprise me are to either do those plot points or those archetypes or tropes in an interesting way to like put a fun twist on it, or to do them exceptionally well. And those are the only ways you can really surprise me in a book. And that's why some of these books are held in such high esteem. They are not inventing the wheel when it comes to fantasy. They're just doing the wheel in a nice fancy way. My friend was like, oh, so when you read a book, you're kind of drawing parallels to other books that you've read. So like book A, while you're reading it, you're going, oh, this concept is from book B, or this concept was done so much better in book D, or I like the way book A explains these characters that I read in, book Z. I forgot what letter I was on. I hate that my friend said that, because now I am constantly thinking about that, and it is very hard not to compare books to each other. And it's not that I think this book is plagiarizing or that they're trying to be derivative of other books. As I was reading this, I was like, oh, this is just Full Metal Alchemist. This is just Foundry Side, because it's playing with the same concepts when it comes to like oppression, magic, the cost of magic. The entire time I was reading the second half of this book, because the first half I didn't think of that at all. But the entire time I was reading the second half of the book, I was like, oh, Full Metal Alchemist did that better. This evil villain guy that's so cartoonishly evil villain, Full Metal Alchemist did that better. Like, and it's not, I'm not trying to compare them. I mean, I literally did. They're just playing with the same concepts. And unfortunately, because I've read books that I enjoy better, I'm just sitting here going, well, I'd rather be reading Full Metal Alchemist. I'd rather be reading Foundry Side. And that, unfortunately, is my experience with this book, Blood Over Brighthaven. If you like Full Metal Alchemist or Foundry Side or Babel, and you want another book that plays with those similar concepts, and what I said wasn't already off-putting to you, go ahead and give it a try. It has been getting amazing reviews, and I'm sure there are a lot of reasons to love it. Like I said, the first 50% was amazing, and for me, it just got to a point where I could not stand certain aspects of it. So that was my rant review. That's gonna be it for me. I am so tired. I probably should have made this 2 separate videos because I spent so much time talking about Blood Over Brighthaven. But that was my experience for March. Alright, that's gonna be it for me. Okay, bye! I truly don't... My window is closed, by the way. This is just how loud it is.